Good evening. From Beijing tonight, a statement from China's foreign ministry has put two of the world's most sensitive flashpoints, Iran and Taiwan, at the center of international debate. At a press briefing in Beijing, spokesman Guo Jiakun addressed journalists on Friday, delivering carefully chosen words about the future of the Iranian nuclear deal and about rising tensions in the Taiwan Strait. His remarks offered insight into how Beijing views two crises that could reshape global diplomacy. On Iran, Guo's message was unambiguous. China does not believe that reimposing sanctions through the United Nations snapback mechanism will bring stability. The spokesman described the Iranian nuclear issue as being, quote, at a critical juncture, and warned that punitive measures would only weaken the prospects of a political and diplomatic settlement. In his words, launching sanctions now is not constructive. These comments come after European countries triggered the process that could, within 30 days, reimpose broad United Nations sanctions on Tehran. The move is widely seen as a response to Iran's nuclear enrichment activities, which European capitals say breach commitments under the 2015 nuclear deal, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Yet China has made clear that it sees this as the wrong step at the wrong time. Guo went further, stressing that the role of the United Nations Security Council should not be to deepen divides, but to encourage dialogue. He said, so quote, any action by the Security Council at present should be conducive to promoting the resumption of dialogue and negotiations rather than creating new confrontation that could worsen or even escalate the situation. For Beijing, the key point is that diplomacy, not confrontation, remains the only viable path. To understand the significance of this, it is important to recall the history. The JCPOA was signed in 2015 by Iran, the United States, China, Russia, France, Britain, Germany, and the European Union. The deal was intended to prevent Tehran from developing a nuclear weapon in exchange for sanctions relief. But the US withdrawal in 2018 under President Donald Trump fractured the accord, leading Iran to scale up its nuclear program once again. Since then, negotiations to restore or replace the deal have faltered. European governments, frustrated by Iran's advances, decided to trigger the snapback clause. But China, alongside Russia, argues that reimposing sanctions would only destroy what little chance remains for compromise. For Iran, the stakes are high. Fresh UN sanctions could target its economy at a time when inflation, unemployment, and domestic pressures are already biting hard. For Europe, the concern is security. With enrichment levels inching closer to weapons grade, the fear is that Iran could rapidly shorten its breakout time. But for Beijing, the larger concern is stability, that sanctions would corner Iran, escalate tensions in the Gulf, and potentially ignite a wider crisis. Guo's remarks therefore place China firmly in the camp of dialogue advocates. The message is clear. Beijing does not want another confrontation at the Security Council. Instead, it seeks to be seen as a defender of multilateralism, a voice for restraint at a moment of international uncertainty. But the press briefing did not stop with Iran. Guo Jiakun also addressed another highly sensitive issue, Taiwan. In a stern rebuke, he criticized the recent visit of members of the US Senate Armed Services Committee to Taipei. He declared that China has always firmly opposed any form of official contact between the United States and Taiwan, calling the lawmakers' trip a, quote, serious violation of the One China principle and the three China-US joint communiques. His words carried the familiar weight of Beijing's long-standing policy. Guo warned that such visits undermine China's sovereignty and territorial integrity and, in his phrasing, send gravely wrong signals to what Beijing calls separatist forces advocating Taiwan independence. In essence, China views these visits as deliberate provocations, testing its red line on sovereignty. The twin themes of Guo's briefing, Iran sanctions and Taiwan visits, might appear unrelated, but together they reveal Beijing's evolving diplomatic posture. On one hand, China is presenting itself as a cautious player, urging restraint in the nuclear file. On the other, it is asserting uncompromising authority over what it considers its core interests. This duality is important. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, China wields veto power and can shape the debate on sanctions against Iran. At the same time, its stance on Taiwan reflects a broader contest with Washington, one that touches not only diplomacy, but also military, economic and technological rivalry. For observers, Beijing's words raise key questions. Will China coordinate with Russia to block or delay snapback sanctions at the Security Council? Can Europe, frustrated with Iran, be persuaded to return to negotiations instead of pressure tactics? And will the United States, already stretched across conflicts and commitments, adjust its approach either on Iran or on Taiwan? The timing of these developments adds urgency. Iran is approaching parliamentary elections, and its government faces growing domestic unrest. Europe confronts its own economic pressures and security concerns. And across the Taiwan Strait, military exercises by the People's Liberation Army have escalated, signalling Beijing's readiness to respond to what it sees as external interference. Guo Jiakun's statements, therefore, should not be dismissed as routine diplomatic talking points. They reflect a broader strategy to position China as a mediator in Middle Eastern affairs while maintaining a hardline stance in its immediate region. For Beijing, Iran represents a stage to showcase its commitment to diplomacy, non-interference and stability. Taiwan, by contrast, represents a red line, a matter of sovereignty on which it will not yield. By addressing both issues in a single briefing, the Chinese Foreign Ministry sent a message to the world. China wants to be respected as both a power that promotes global stability and one that will defend its territorial claims without compromise. As the 30-day countdown for snapback sanctions ticks away, and as US lawmakers continue to visit Taipei, the words spoken in Beijing today will echo in diplomatic corridors from New York to Brussels, from Tehran to Washington. They are a reminder that China is not just an observer, but an active participant shaping the future of two of the most contentious issues in international politics. The world will now watch closely. Will Europe proceed with sanctions? Will Iran respond with defiance or with dialogue? And how far will US lawmakers go in testing Beijing's patience on Taiwan? For now, China's message remains clear. Choose diplomacy over confrontation, restraint over escalation, and never question its sovereignty.